More on this, let's bring in CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. He is joining us from Washington. All right, Ed. So to those folks who may not live on the East Coast, may not be that familiar with Deval Patrick nationally, explain who he is and why he's running for president in the first place, especially, as you pointed out earlier this morning, this late in the game. It's never been done.
Never been done this late in the game. That's right, guys. He's a 63-year-old former two-term governor of Massachusetts, the first African-American to serve as governor of Massachusetts, and the only Democrat to serve as governor of Massachusetts this century. The Bay State likes electing moderate Republicans mostly. He also previously worked at Texaco and Coca-Cola as a general counsel, but spent the Clinton administration years running the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division and was responsible for things like investigating a series of arson fires at black churches across the South. So he'll emphasize all aspects of his record, his work for the Clinton administration, his private sector work, and his 8 years as governor. He got to implement the Mitt Romney signed government-backed health care plan in Massachusetts that ultimately served as the model for the Affordable Care Act. And as he said this morning on CBS this morning, he would rather see something like that built and expanded upon instead of scratched in favor of something like Medicare for All. He is a moderate. He is expected to try to cast himself as a unifier, not only of the Democratic Party, but of the country overall. And he has a very compelling life story. Came, real rags to riches, born on the south side of Chicago, earned a scholarship to the prestigious Milton Academy in the Boston area, went to Harvard for his undergrad, got a law degree there as well, and has become somebody that remains a player in Democratic politics. Despite the fact that he's been out of office for several years, he spent most of last year campaigning for moderate Democrats across the country in congressional districts that they ultimately picked up that had voted for Republicans in the past. And so we can expect his campaign will look a lot like that.
So at this point, though, when you look at the polls, we've got our sort of solid top three, and then everyone else is kind of still way far behind. So what's the likelihood of him shaking that up? And if he can't shake that up, can he at least control the narrative for a while? Sometimes, even a lower polling candidate comes in and they say something and they get they're part of the news cycle for a while, and they force the other candidates to discuss what they want to talk about.
That may be what's up here. We'll see. You're right. He's going to have a really difficult time breaking into that top tier that has three, some would say four now with Pete Buttigieg, given the fact that he's actually been winning some of these early surveys in Iowa. And, we checked because I was asked this morning. Nobody has ever gotten into a presidential race this late in the modern primary caucus system. Wesley Clark did it in September of 2003. Fred Thompson did it in early September 2007. He's doing it in November. It's unheard of, but he seems to think that he'll be able to put together a team pretty quickly. One thing we noticed that he is picking up some former staffers of Beto O'Rourke, so there is some talent available, given that O'Rourke is now out of the race. He's known some of them for a while, and he suspects somehow he'll be able to build this up. But you're right. I think, if anything, Anne-Marie, he might at least be able to control elements of the conversation for the next few days and be another voice raising concerns about this push for Medicare for All, arguing that it's not only potentially tricky for the economy and for the nation's healthcare system, but politically a problem for Democrats if they hope to win over voters that had supported the president before.
So, Ed, it's interesting. You'll recall when he was on CBS this morning a few weeks back, he was asked about this, and he said something along, I'm paraphrasing here, somebody who enters this late in the game has to either be a rock star or sensationalistic, and he said, I'm neither of those things. The other thing that he's not, unlike Michael Bloomberg, as you know, Ed, is personally wealthy. Exactly. Right. The money. So how's he going to do this?
Woo. Good question, because you're right, he doesn't have $52 billion to his name like Mike Bloomberg does. He is, well off in that he has been a successful corporate attorney and has worked at Bain Capital the last few years, but not enough money to put up enough for a reputable campaign. So, he's going to have to explain that. He will be in Concord, New Hampshire later this morning to file the paperwork. Part of that tradition is that you then step into the conference room of the Secretary of State here in New Hampshire and you face a barrage of questions from the flinty New Hampshire press corps. So hopefully they will ask those kinds of questions for us and draw him out a little more on why it is he suddenly thinks he can get into this and somehow pull it off. The argument for him, of course, is that given that he's from next door Massachusetts, he could conceivably do well in New Hampshire, although some polling that had been taken last year before everyone started announcing put him at no better than 8% in New Hampshire, at least at the start. The other place where people think he might do well is South Carolina, given that his brand of politics, that more moderate Democrat style, is appealing to Southern voters, and of course that he is black, and North South Carolina has the largest pool of black voters in an early primary state. So we'll see. But he's already missed the ballot in 2 states. Alabama and Arkansas had deadlines last week or earlier this week, and so he'd only potentially be competitive in 48 of the 50 primary states if he needed to do it, although we're going to get technical here. Caucus states don't actually have filing deadlines, but that's just too much information for this hour of the day.
All right, Ed, always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.